real danger is going to be the double standard. By arresting 3 deputies over here while protecting another for the exact same crime, the administration at the sheriff's office is admitting that justice here isn't blind. The next time a police department claimed that an officer just needed more training after breaking the law, remember this video. Today, we are going to take a look at the official internal affairs interview transcript for Cherokee County Deputy Lisa Dean. The department tried to brush her actions under the rug as a minor, I think they called it, training issue, but the actual room tells a terrifyingly different story. Let's look at the absolute proof that the rules change depending on who you are and who you are protecting.
Hi, Deputy Dean. Thank you for coming in today. I appreciate it. Hate that I had to hit you like that. Tell you to come in right away. All right, Deputy Dean, this is your copy. This is the accusation that was made by Major Pinion. It has you listed as a suspect officer. Mm-hmm. And this is the comments that you're going to want to make yourself familiar with. Let me know when you're done reading.
You're talking about an officer who signed user agreements, knew the system, and explicitly admitted on tape that she committed a felony computer invasion of privacy simply to stalk her high-ranking girlfriend's ex-husband. Hey guys, it is me. When I first came to the internet and started talking about what happened to me at the hands of a Cherokee County Sheriff's Deputy, Corporal Mills, I started getting bombarded with messages from all sorts of people just telling me their different experiences or information that they had heard, whatever it might be, right? So I started hearing about some like pretty serious, what I think are serious incidents and allegations about some officers. And so I did file some open records. Some of the officers actually are listed as witnesses on either my current case or even my son's case or both of them. So now I have the long-awaited documents for internal affairs on Jack Fullenwender. And I think that's how you say his name. If I butchered it, I'm sorry. Probably butcher it more. It had been reported to me by numerous people that he had a use of force incident where he was demoted but not criminally charged in Georgia. And so the suspect was actually restrained. And I just feel like this officer likely should have been charged with some sort of aggravated battery based on what the law reads, but he wasn't, so just like Corporal Mills didn't go down for his drinking and driving and the open container that was sustained with the department, this is just one of many stories and incidents that we are uncovering. And I feel like it is important for people to know transparency for the community is it just shouldn't be swept under the rug by the department or by Frank Reynolds. Our sheriff should have more transparency and not selective. So I'm going to share my screen super quick. So give me just a minute. Let's see. Let's share screen. Okay. So let's look at what the state received. This is a formal notice of post-investigation sent to Frank Reynolds. State Post Council had initiated this because Jack Fullenwender was disciplined with a disciplinary demotion while actively employed as a deputy sheriff. And he was employed with the Cherokee County Sheriff's Department. So let me pull this back because I started to do this last night, but we had a lot of stuff going on. And I kind of just want to read over some of it with you. Let's see. All right, so let's start here. Notice the post investigation. So I'm just going to kind of like read through some of this with you, and I will be linking any internal affairs documents or any documents really that I'm able to obtain from the department, because like I said, the purpose of this is to help the community with transparency. Transparency is so important. I don't think there's enough of it, so I think that if more of us step up and speak up and request and whatever it may be, that we can end up helping each other in the long run. So I will be linking these somewhere on my website, hopefully later this evening, and I'll be able to let you guys know where, okay? So the Georgia Peace Officer Standards and Training Council post has received information may which affect the listed officer certification or application status with the state of Georgia as defined by OCGA 35-8-71. Pursuant to this information, the council has initiated an investigation in order to make an appropriate decision regarding their certifications. Your agency is being notified of this investigation because the following officer was on your agency's roster most recently: Jack Reed Fullenwinder, Deputy Sheriff actively employed in law enforcement, Cherokee County Sheriff's Office. This is the allegation, but it's blank. And then the post investigator assigned to handling this case was Monica Franklin, which is interesting because she also had her hands in the cookie jar when it came to Corporal Mills as well. So what I'm going to do is scroll past all of those because those are the sustained and the allegations. And I kind of just want to get into a little bit with what was said and how it all started. Okay, so here's the incident report. And you can see what the gentleman was being arrested for: fleeing or attempting to elude a police officer. And there's something interesting about this we'll get to later, but fleeing or attempting to elude a police officer, reckless driving, hit and run, duty of driver to stop at or return to the scene, driving while license suspended, obstructing or hindering law enforcement officers. So here we have, on May 27th, 2021, I observed a black Toyota Highlander traveling southbound on Highway 5 with the driver using his cell phone while the vehicle was in motion. And this is written by Officer Scott Staber, I believe, and his badge number is 241. He is with the Holly Springs Police Department. I pulled onto Highway 5, observed the Highlander pull into the left-hand lane, appearing to turn on Tune-Up Road. While sitting at the light, I called my traffic stop out to dispatch, notifying them we're pulling into the old Rite Aid off of Tune-Up Road and the vehicle's tag number. I activated my emergency lights to initiate my traffic stop. When the light changed green, the driver, later identified as Richard Abernathy, slowed down, appearing as if he was going to stop. Abernathy then accelerated at a high rate of speed through the busy Tuna shopping plaza. I notified dispatch that I was in pursuit of Abernathy's vehicle. Abernathy drove behind the Kroger and got back onto Highway 5, going southbound at an extreme high rate of speed. I got behind Abernathy and used due regard while he drove into oncoming traffic, endangering the lives of hundreds of drivers on Highway 5. Abernathy drove in a reckless manner, almost causing multiple collisions with both lanes of travel. I stayed behind Abernathy down Highway 5 until the roundabout at Haney Road when a Woodstock unit joined the pursuit and cut my vehicle off. I stayed behind the Woodstock vehicle as secondary and observed Abernathy turn onto the Innovation Way on the south side of the Chattahoochee Technical College Woodstock campus. Abernathy jumped the curb behind the Chattahoochee Technical College and drove the Highlander into a tree prior to bailing on foot. The Woodstock officer and myself followed in pursuit on foot. Abernathy jumped down a large hill behind Chattahoochee Technical College and ran into the thick briar patches behind the school. Dobbs Road, Parks Circle, Cherokee County Sheriff's and Woodstock Police Department also responded to this incident. Other agencies' cases to reference are Cherokee County Sheriff's Office case S021-007215 and then Woodstock case number 10482. I ran down the hill behind Chattahoochee Technical College with the Woodstock officer and found our way to the lower parking lot by Dobbs Road, where I remained to hold a perimeter. While holding a perimeter, the Cherokee County Sheriff's Department notified everyone that they had gotten in contact with the registered owner, Kimberly Ann Stallings, whom stated she had lent her Highlander to her boyfriend earlier in the day to play golf. Stallings stated her boyfriend was Richard Young Abernathy. I obtained a video from the Chattahoochee Technical College police showing where Abernathy had crashed the Highlander in the rear of the campus. The pictures are attached. Stallings was later transported to the scene by Deputy England of the Cherokee County Sheriff's Office. When I spoke with Stallings, she stated she was unaware of Abernathy's suspended license or why he would flee from law enforcement. I showed a picture of the video to Stallings and asked if she could verify who was exiting the Highlander after it hit the tree. Stallings verified the person exiting her Highlander was her boyfriend, Richard Young Abernathy. Abernathy had warrants taken out for the following charges, and then it has the warrant number so this is Patrick Davis. On 5/28/21, I responded as backup to Officer Saver at 103 Northampton Drive for a possible wanted person located that was involved in a previous vehicle pursuit on 5/27/2021. When I arrived on scene, Officer Saber informed me that when they arrived at the house, he observed the male, Richard Abernathy, come to the door, lock it, and run off, turning all the lights off in the house. We made multiple attempts to get Richard to come to the door, and he would not answer. So mind you, remember, this is his house too, okay? And they had an arrest warrant. We spoke to one of the neighbors, and they stated that his father, Mike Abernathy, was home and that they would try to call him. The neighbor said it's not like Mike to not answer his phone and that it was very concerning. And at that point, we became concerned for the safety of his father and the mother. We tried multiple times to call Mike, but were unsuccessful. We also tried calling the mother, Pat Abernathy, as she did not answer as well. We became even more concerned about what was going on inside the residence at this point. We were able to make contact with a coworker of Pat, and she stated that she contacted her via text message and confirmed that Pat was also in the home and she was not answering the door. Let's see. Sergeant Conrad was able to obtain a search warrant for the residence. The search warrant was placed on the front steps of the residence, and we knocked on the door and told them we had a search warrant. So they had a felony arrest warrant for this suspect for his own home. And yet they still did not make entry. They applied for and waited for a search warrant. Interesting, because that didn't happen in my house, and it should have. And it was a third party. But anyway, after several more attempts to get someone to answer the door, we made forced entry into the residence through the basement door and entered the home, announcing ourselves. While we were approaching the stairs that led to the upper floor, we made contact with Mike as he came down. Mike stated that everyone was okay inside and that Richard was upstairs laying face down in the living room. Now remember, Mike is his dad. We made our way upstairs to find Richard laying face down in front of the fireplace in the living room with his hands on his head. I placed Richard in his handcuffs behind his back, checked for proper fit, and double locked him. While I was handcuffing him, Richard sustained an injury to his blank. And it's redacted, but when you read through all these documents, I'm going to safely assume that it was his lip, okay? By a Cherokee County Sheriff's deputy. Cherokee Fire was already staged on scene and came into and provided medical care to Richard's lip. Richard was transported to Cherokee Fire Squad 5 to this would be the hospital to be treated for his injury. Officer Burns followed a Squad 5 to the hospital to wait to transport Richard after he was cleared by doctors to the Cherokee County ADC. That was Holly Springs. So then we have another Holly Springs. Let's see. The wanted individual, Richard Young, was placed under arrest. At some point during the arrest, Richard sustained a busted, and I'm going to assume lip, due to the injury. Richard was transported to Blank for evaluation and treatment before transport to the Cherokee County Adult Detention Center. At Blank, which I would assume is the hospital, Richard received, this would be stitches in his lip for the injury, and he was cleared for release. After his release, I handcuffed Richard behind the back, checked the cuffs for it, or double locked the handcuffs. I secured Richard in the rear of my patrol car with the proper application of a seatbelt. At the ADC, I turned Richard over to intake deputies for processing, and I served the arrest warrant Officer Staver secured early in the morning. I inspected the rest of my patrol car before and after transporting Richard to the ADC. So this is a supplemental. I'm not sure like where it starts or why it starts here, but we proceeded further into the residence, saw who appeared to be Richard, proceeded to handcuff Richard while I cleared the 2 bedrooms in the front of the house. I then went back to the living room, realized there was 2 other rooms behind the living room that have not yet been cleared. The master bedroom had a person laying in the bed. Said person was later identified as Patricia, told Patricia to get out of the bed and sit with her husband in the front of the home. Richard sustained an injury to his lip via the Cherokee County Sheriff's Office K-9 deputy, and EMS checked him out. Richard requested transport to the hospital, and Officer Burns met him at, and this is all redacted, a lot of redaction. On the morning of May 28th, I met with Officer Burns and Richard Abernathy to return Richard's red iPhone that was found in the driver's seat of the crashed Highlander from the previous day. Richard confirmed the phone was his and the phone was returned to him so Officer Burns could turn it in as his property at the Cherokee County Adult Detention Center. Richard Abernathy was charged with the following: obstructing and hindering a law enforcement officer. And then for whatever reason, these are all redacted. Nothing further to report. Then we come up and these are images of the vehicle where it wrecked. This is the front of the car and the little tree it wrecked into. It didn't wreck that bad. Anyway, this is our suspect, I suppose. This would be him exiting the vehicle. I'm gonna assume this was him probably in the jail. Doesn't have shoes on. Doesn't really look like the hospital to me, but I mean, yeah, I guess it could be, but I think it's the jail. No. All right. So at approximately 2300 on May 27th, 2021, I met with the Alpha units at CCSO at 6175 Hickory Flat Highway in Canton. Jones went over a game plan with his units and us, and we then left the Hickory Flat Village and headed for Richard Abernathy's residence. Upon arrival to Northampton Drive, all patrol cars were parked at the entrance of the neighborhood blacked out. Sergeant Jones and 2 of his deputies staged at the rear of the residence while Corporal Artigas and Officer Burns and I step up to the front door. Corporal Artigas started ringing the doorbell and knocking on the front door, announcing we were there to serve an arrest warrant. Shortly after knocking on the front door, a white shirtless male matching the suspect came to the door and stated he was not coming out. I notified Corporal Artigas that he was who we were looking for. Sergeant Jones stated that he didn't want to destroy the front door to the property to eliminate excessive damage. I notified Corporal Davis and Sergeant Conrad that we had made visual contact with Richard and would like to proceed with a search warrant of the property. Corporal Davis showed up to the residence shortly after, and Sergeant Conrad stayed at the Holly Springs Police Department, starting the process of obtaining a search warrant. During this process, Sergeant Jones pulled his patrol car in the front lawn of the residence and activated his emergency lights. While waiting for the physical copy of the search warrant, Sergeant Jones requested a CCSO K-9 and a Cherokee County EMS ambulance to stand by in case of injury. Upon arrival of Officer Snyder and this physical copy of the search warrant for the residence, Sergeant Jones went over a game plan for entrance of the home. It was communicated multiple times over the loudspeaker that we have obtained a search warrant for the residence and would rather the residents allow us in and prevent damage to the home. A copy of the search warrant was left at the front door. 1 deputy stayed at the front door while all the other officers, deputies on scene, staged at the rear basement door preparing for entry. Sergeant Jones used a sledgehammer to make entry on the basement door. Corporal Artigas had made clear entry and cleared the left side of the basement. Michael Abernathy came down the basement stairs and first stated he didn't want to comply with us. He later stated that Richard Abernathy was at the top of the stairs on his chest with his hands behind his back. We proceeded up the stairs into the kitchen, and Richard Abernathy was not where Michael Abernathy stated he was. Okay. And then it just kind of like cuts off. I don't really know why, but it's pretty interesting, huh? So I'm not going to read like all of each individual's officer narrative because there was a lot of narratives there, but I will read like the paragraphs that are specific to the incident that I'm reading all of this for. Okay. So let's see. This one, Justin Messenger really just arrived for backup, and I think he had went to pull like a pepper ball gun out of his car, and then that's when he was told that they had already made the arrest and whatnot. So the call, he put the pepper gun back and then returned to service. So he didn't really have a whole lot to offer to the situation, thankfully. So this one is going to be Officer Artigas with the Cherokee County Sheriff's Department. And let's see. He says the room was dark with none of the lights on, and the only lights available were the flashlights we were carrying. The person on the floor was Richard, and he appeared to be agitated and upset, arguing and talking loud with the officers who were trying to gain control of his person. Michael came upstairs and stood around trying to approach the location where Richard was being arrested. I asked Michael to have a seat and pulled a chair out, asking him to sit on the chair. Michael complied at first, but got up not long after. I directed my flashlight to where Richard was and noticed that he had some, and I'm going to assume this is blood, on his lip and some on the floor. Richard, still agitated, talking loudly and complaining, I walked to the kitchen, grabbed some paper towels, and returned to help Richard with some of the blood that was coming out from his, I would assume, mouth or lip. Richard refused my help and the paper towel I had brought to him. I inserted the paper towel on his shirt collar in case he decided to use it and stood aside. His mother, Patricia, was talking with one of the Holly Springs Police Department officers, and I heard Patricia stating that she was aware that law enforcement was at her house and that she refused to open the door. When asked why, she stated that her lawyer told her to not open the door. Fire and EMS was called to the residence to examine Richard, and when Fire EMS asked what happened, Richard said he did not know, did not remember. Richard said his lip was hurting, and when EMS personnel asked where it was hurting, Richard was not able to give an exact location. That might not be lip, I'm not sure. Could be his back. They redacted it. He began telling EMS that his blank hurt and he had a blank. EMS began cleaning his, I would say, lip to check the injury, and Richard tried to get them to stop. EMS had to explain a few times what they were doing, and after a few attempts, EMS was able to clean his lips. So they missed that. So yeah, it was his lips. And continued their first assessment. A few minutes later, it was decided that Richard needed to be transported to the hospital by EMS. After Richard left the residence, I returned to my patrol car, secured my rifle, and a few minutes later left the residence returning to service. Notice how this does not say anything about what caused the injury. Okay. So then we go down here and we have another Cherokee County officer. I'm just not even going to try to pronounce some of these names because I don't want to butcher them respectfully. And I'm going to scroll through. You guys are going to be welcome to be able to read these yourselves. I exited the residence through the basement door, did not sustain any injury during the event. I was informed Richard was transported to blank. Here we have, I took position at the entrance of a hallway and provided cover for officers clearing the residence. I heard a voice respond to my announcement from the living area. I saw officers in the living room area taking a male into custody by applying handcuffs while he was laying on the floor. This subject was later identified as Richard Abernathy. I saw Richard attempt to get up from a prone position while being handcuffed. He did this by taking his right hand and placing it on the ground and raising his body up off the ground. I saw Deputy Fullenwander restrain him by placing his foot on Richard and forcing him to the ground. So the context of that, I feel like it matters. So just like pay attention to the way that this officer wrote that. Because he made it sound like, the guy wasn't complying and the suspect wasn't complying. And so, yeah. Then we have this. Who is this? This is Officer Shauna Murphy with the Cherokee County Sheriff's Department. Let's see what she says. Didn't really have a lot to offer. So y'all can read through her narrative as well. The team then moved upstairs. So who's this? This is Jack. The team then moved upstairs where the next level was cleared. Richard was located in the living room laying face down on his stomach. Holly Springs Police Department, Corporal Davis, and I approached his location while telling him to stay on the ground and not to move. I oriented my taser at his back as we approached. My taser was not arced or deployed, and only the laser dots were oriented at him. Holly Springs Police Department, Corporal Davis placed one handcuff on Richard. Richard then quickly moved like he was going to roll over, and he did not stay face down on his stomach like ordered. Due to his history of fleeing and the potential for him to attempt it again, I wanted to make sure that he stayed down while the handcuffs were applied. I used my right foot to press down on his shoulder blades. I did not forcefully apply pressure, stomp him, or strike him. When I did this, his face hit the hardwood floors and busted his lip. So read that, okay? If you didn't forcefully apply pressure or stomp him or strike him, there would not have been enough force for his face to hit a hardwood floor and bust his lip, okay? He started to bleed from his lip and was ordered by Holly Springs Police Department, Corporal Davis, and I to stay down and not attempt to get up. He complied and was quickly and safely secured in handcuffs, and then Richard began to yell at us and accused me of using steel-toe boots to kick his blank. I opted not to utilize my taser as it was too close of proximity to Corporal Davis, and I did not want to risk him being tased. Fire EMS came. Again, they took him to the hospital. This is the Uniform Patrol Division zone assignment log where it shows the officers that were there. So this is interesting too, because I don't understand it. Maybe somebody can help me, but this is the use of force log or sheet where I would assume officers have to fill this in anytime they use officer or use of force during an incident. And it looks like he filled this in. This one was Jack prepared for Richard. Subject injured, yes. Medical treatment for the offender, yes. And then it says, please refer to IA, and then it has the IA number, IA investigation into possible use of force violation. I don't know who this is, but somebody signed off on it and said level of force used was reasonable. So this one said, I heard a voice respond to my announcement from the living area. I saw officers in the living room area taking a male into custody by applying handcuffs while he was laying on the floor. The subject was later identified as Richard Abernathy. I saw Richard attempt to get up from a prone position while being handcuffed. He did this by taking his right hand and placing it on the ground and raising his body up off the ground. I saw Deputy Fullenwander restrain him by placing his foot on Richard and forcing him to the ground. I feel like this is important because this is not what happened. So it's like, why did they write that this guy was essentially not complying and trying to get up? But y'all decide. But yeah, that's not what happened. Anyway, I continued clearing the rooms on the main level of the residence. EMS came and they took him. Okay, so this is Cody Jones, right? And this is what he says. Prior to making entry, I ran a criminal history on Richard. He was not a convicted felon, had no weapons charges, and other than fleeing and eluding and a DUI, had a relatively minor rap sheet. I verified with neighbors about any firearms they knew were in his home or the Abernathys were known to carry or possess. Everyone stated the same thing. They did not know of any weapons inside of the home. I consider the totality of the circumstances, the risk versus the reward for apprehension of the suspect, and the safety for all officers involved, and the decision was made to execute the warrant. I relayed this to the team clearing the home. The team ascended to the stairs and they approached the door. I heard what sounded like running on hardwood floors on the main level of the home, and the team made it upstairs, and I heard them giving loud verbal commands to someone. When I arrived upstairs, Corporal Fullenwinder and Corporal Davis had Richard in handcuffs. I approached Richard and witnessed he was bleeding from a cut on his bottom lip. He was exclaiming, "They kicked me." Since fire was already on scene, I summoned them to come inside and treat Richard's injured lip. I asked Corporal Fullenwinder what happened, and he told me Richard attempted to get up off the ground by pushing himself up. He stated they were attempting to handcuff Richard and he was being non-compliant. Corporal Fullenwinder told me he used his foot and applied pressure to Richard's shoulder, forcing Richard back to the floor to gain compliance. Fire treated Richard at the scene, and Richard requested to go to the hospital. HSPD followed fire to the hospital for treatment, and the investigation was turned over to HSPD. And that was Sergeant Jones who wrote that. And we have pictures. This is what I would assume a bloody paper towel on the floor from his injury. This is a bloody paper towel on the floor from his injury as well. Here it is again. There's a couple of them. And this is just like a weed tray, I guess. A marijuana tray. Looks like some marijuana accessories. It says Richard's room. Okay, we have the door where they made entry. This is the suspect, and they have redacted his face so that we cannot see the injury. More bloody paper towels. Why did they send me so much double? They're gonna make me pay for it. Y'all doubled the whole thing. No wonder it takes so long. Y'all sending me double files. Here is a picture of his boots, Jack's boots that he's accused of kicking him with. The front of them. It's kind of yucky looking. Okay. All right. Let's read this letter real quick. On June 1st, 2021, I was contacted by Lieutenant Mike Hills and asked to come by his office. When I arrived, he explained a few of his officers had concerns about the actions of Corporal Jack Fullenwinder. He explained that Corporal Fullenwinder and other sheriff's office assisted the Holly Springs police with the search warrant on May 27, 2021. Lieutenant Hells told me during the arrest, Corporal Fullenwinder caused an injury to Mike Abernathy. The officer alleges that while Abernathy was on the ground being handcuffed by Corporal Davis, Corporal Fullenwinder kicked Abernathy, causing injury to his lip. Lieutenant Hells allowed me to watch the body cam video from Officer Staber. In the video, I can see Abernathy lying prone out on the floor with an officer controlling his right arm. Corporal Fullenwinder is standing to the left of Abernathy, and you can see him place his right foot on Abernathy's left shoulder blade, pushing him to the ground. During this, Abernathy sustains an injury to his lip, and it is unclear exactly what caused the injury. One of the 3 Holly Springs Police Department's officers approached Lieutenant Hells on Friday, May 28, 2021, and told him about the incident. They feel that the actions of Corporal Fullenwinder were uncalled for. I asked Lieutenant Hells for a copy of the video, and he said he would get it to me. This from Major Smith. Final report of Internal Affairs investigation. On June 3rd, 2021, Captain P. Turcott turned over an allegation of misconduct against Corporal Jack Fullenwinder. Okay, so Captain Turcott is the one that wrote that little note. Captain D. Higgins conducted this investigation and spoke with numerous Holly Springs Police Department officers, along with Deputy Caporino and Corporal Fullenwinder. All audio, video, and reports pertaining to this incident were reviewed, and the details of this investigation are outlined in the attached IA case report. The findings of the investigation are as follows. Cherokee Sheriff's Office Policy 010302F20 states, employees shall only use the force that is reasonably necessary under the circumstances to achieve lawful agency objectives. The use of physical force shall be restrained to that amount of force which is reasonable and necessary to effect a lawful arrest, overcome resistance, or capture a person who has escaped from custody or in defense of self or others. Corporal Fullenwinder's force was unreasonable and unnecessary. Richard Abernathy was lying in the living room of his parents' home and was completely compliant with the arresting officers on the scene. During the attempted handcuffing of Richard by the Holly Springs police officer, Corporal Fullenwinder stated he struck him in the upper back area because he thought he was getting up. However, in reviewing the video, Mr. Abernathy's movement on the ground was likely caused by the arresting officers securing his arms. Furthermore, after the strike by Corporal Fullenwinder to Richard's torso, Corporal Fullenwinder failed to follow up the force with assisting with the arrest. The allegation of unreasonable and unnecessary force is sustained. So, in other words, he kicked him, and he tried to claim that he thought he was getting up. So normally when you're trying to help another officer who is restraining a suspect, you would do what you need to do and help them get him in handcuffs. However, what Jack did was he kicked him in the guy's face, smacked the floor with the force, busted his lip. He required stitches, but then he just stood there. So he kicked him and just, went about his business. This is the letter to post. Corporal Jack Fullenwinder is an employee of the Cherokee Sheriff's Office. He's assigned to the agency's K-9 unit with the Special Operations Division. On May 28, 2021, Corporal Fullenwinder assisted the Holly Springs Police Department with the service of nonviolent felony arrest warrants against Richard Abernathy. Upon arrival at the arrestee's home, the Holly Springs Police Department observed Richard in the house, but he turned off the lights, refused to exit the residence, and turned himself over to law enforcement. After an extended period of time, the Holly Springs Police Department obtained a search warrant to legally enter the home and effect the arrest of Richard. So Holly Springs had to get an arrest warrant to effect the arrest of this gentleman at his, now parents' house, but he clearly had a room there, for that to be legal. But at least Holly Springs knows how to do their job for the most part, because Cherokee County, apparently they don't need warrants. They just will break into your house. Ask me how I know that. And then take you to jail for asking for a warrant that they don't have. Once entry was made, Richard was found lying on the living room floor just in front of the fireplace. Richard was being compliant at this time, had both of his hands on the top of his head while he was lying face down on his stomach. During the attempted handcuffing of Richard by a Holly Springs police officer, Corporal Fullenwinder struck Richard in the upper back with his right foot. Corporal Fullenwinder advised he thought Richard was trying to get up. However, in reviewing the video, Richard's movement on the ground was caused by the arresting officer securing his arms. Furthermore, after the strike by Corporal Fullenwinder to Richard's torso, Corporal Fullenwinder failed to follow up with the force with assisting with the arrest. Corporal Fullenwinder's use of force action was unreasonable and unnecessary. He was found to be in violation of the Cherokee Sheriff's Office use of force policy, and the accusation was sustained. Corporal Fullenwinder was demoted from the position of corporal to the rank of deputy sheriff, and he was transferred out of the K-9 unit and suspended for 16 hours. These disciplinary actions took place on June 15th, 2021, and were immediate. So he got 2 days off. Now let's read the actual Georgia law that applies here. Under OCGA 16-5-24, for aggravated battery, a person commits this offense when he or she maliciously causes bodily harm to another by depriving him or her of a member of his or her body, by rendering a member of his or her body useless, or by seriously disfiguring his or her body or a member thereof. The report explicitly states that Richard Abernathy sustained an injury to his body from this kick while prone on the floor. When an officer uses completely unauthorized, unnecessary physical force via a stomp or a kick, depending on who you ask, onto a restrained face-down suspect causing injury, that moves past a policy violation. That warrants a criminal look, but there were no criminal charges filed here. So let's cross-reference the Holly Springs Police Department side of the paperwork with, if we were to scroll down to Corporal Patrick Davis's supplemental report from that night. He notes that when they made forced entry, Richard was face down in front of the fireplace with his hands on his head, right? So Corporal Davis writes, while I was handcuffing him, Richard sustained an injury by a Cherokee County Sheriff's deputy. Cherokee Fire had to be staged on scene to provide immediate medical care, and Abernathy had to be transported via fire squad to the hospital to get treatment for those injuries. Then you had Officer Connor Burns, whose report added that Abernathy actually received medical treatment at the hospital for his injuries before he could be cleared to go to the jail, right? This was an incident where local Holly Springs officers were so uncomfortable with a Cherokee County deputy's actions that Lieutenant Mike Hills of the Holly Springs Police Department personally contacted the sheriff's office to flag the misconduct after reviewing the body camera footage. When the system protects its own with minor internal suspensions and demotions instead of holding them to the exact same criminal standards as the rest of this community, accountability fails. We're going to keep digging, and we are going to keep putting these documents on the screen and letting the community know that we care about transparency, and we are here to share it because we believe that law enforcement should be held to a higher standard than the rest of us, not a lower one. And if you or I would have been charged with aggravated battery, why weren't they? Why wasn't he? Why wasn't Corporal Mills charged with an open container and or DUI less safe? Why didn't the officer that saw Corporal Mills drinking, instead of calling his lieutenant, call for backup and find him if he knew he was drinking and driving? I mean, I don't know if it's poor judgment, or if it's selective enforcement, because especially lately, we saw a couple officers that were arrested and had career-changing consequences for some of these allegations. But you're going to see when I report soon, there's another officer who had the same thing, who did the same thing. But because maybe her excuse was a little bit different, I don't know. We don't have the transparency on these other ones, and likely won't until someone files open records after their cases are shut. But, it's concerning. It really is because some people very clearly are treated differently. And I don't know why we're so desperate for law enforcement that we're keeping an officer who kicked somebody because he felt like it, essentially, and busted his lip. I don't know. I wanted to share this. I said I would share this. I did file open records for his body camera. I have not received that yet. When I do, and I actually might file for the other officers because I hear that the angle is better. This has 97 pages. Some of them are a double, but like I said, I'm going to upload them onto my website. And if I've done it by the time this airs this evening, I will make sure that the link is included so that you guys can go and get it. Also, the cost of open records are expensive. Cherokee County charges us out the butt for whatever reason. So if anybody feels like buying me coffee for those, there's a link on that page as well. But yeah, let me know what you think. Do you think he should have got charged? Do you think it should have been a criminal referral? Or do you think it's acceptable that he just kicks people, but he feels like it, but then he lied about it? So in his report, he clearly said he said he pushed him down with his foot, but he even said that he didn't use any force to do it. And he, in quote, it's the in quote for me, is he's mocking the allegation. I think that's what pisses me off. He knew damn well that he kicked him and then stood there. So yeah. Anyway, sorry it took so long to make this video, but enjoy it. Leave your comments, share it with your friends. We'll talk to you soon. Bye. Excuse everything messy about me today. I got up, I went to the gym, I worked out, I got changed because I was going to take my kid to the pool, but his brother decided to take him, so we're good to go. But I got to go to the grocery store in a few minutes. I really just wanted to touch on these charges that I got the other day because I know I posted like a quick update and didn't go into any detail, but I'm really ticked off about it. Considering the fact that it has been 8 months since I was originally charged by Officer Mills for obstruction. And if y'all remember, he says that I obstructed him because it says the accused continued to hinder Corporal Mills by telling occupants in the house to remain in the house after Corporal Mills told occupants to exit. The accused was advised she would be arrested for obstruction, yet she continued to stand in the way and hinder Corporal Mills while she called 911, refusing to comply, right? So it sat there in state court for 8 months with the solicitor, who, is a character all in of himself. We'll go into him like a whole another time. But I think he took a look at this and was like, you know what? For the most part, an obstruction charge has to be physical. And her saying something is not going to stick. So I got to come up with something to try to throw at her. And if this is not like malicious prosecution. Like, I don't know what is, because this is straight bullshit. But what he charged me with was, let me go back. Okay. So, he said, or it says, I, Todd Hayes, Solicitor General of Cherokee County, in the name and on behalf of the citizens of the state of Georgia, do hereby charge and accuse Natasha Lee Lopez with a misdemeanor for that the said accused in Cherokee County, Georgia, on August 30th, did unlawfully then and there commit the offense of obstruction of an officer by knowingly and willfully obstructing Deputy Charles Mills, a law enforcement officer, in the lawful discharge of his official duties by failing to follow his lawful commands to remain on the porch during an active investigation in violation of OCGA 16-10-24, contrary to the laws of this state, the good order, peace, and dignity thereof. And then the second count, he said that did unlawfully then and there commit the offense of obstruction of an officer by knowingly and willfully obstructing Deputy Charles Mills, law enforcement officer, in the lawful discharge of his official duties by failing to follow his lawful commands to exit a residence in violation of OCGA 16-10-24, contrary to the laws of the state of the good order, peace, and I love how he said a resident. He didn't put in there her resident, or the fact that he went in it without a fucking search warrant or exigency. I don't know. Are you letting people show up to your house without probable cause or exigency or whatever they might need and just go into your house? I don't understand it. Like, it infuriates me. My home was not the scene of a crime. It was not under investigation. It was just by chance that my son even happened to be there for him to be able to obtain an arrest warrant. He did not have a search warrant to be at my home. He didn't even have a search warrant to be on my property once I revoked the right for him to be there and told him to leave and go get the right warrants. He didn't even get the right warrants. He got an arrest warrant for my son, and I was kind enough and thought I was following, a lawful command by going and retrieving my son and letting him be arrested. But to charge me, I'm sorry, but you never detained me. You never told me I was detained. Nobody ever said anything about no active investigation. You can't just show up on my property and tell me what to do without a warrant or a crime that's been committed there, because none of that happened. And yeah, I'm really mad about it, because how are you going to change the charge completely and then turn around and charge me twice? Because Cherokee County likes to do that. They will double charge you. If you look at my son's charges, he's charged with felony fleeing and eluding ×2. I'm charged with this ×2. I just sat through another case in state court there for a kid that was charged with speeding twice, because he was charged with, the first one was 103 and a 70, and the other one was just like a speeding, and his attorney took it to jury trial. You have to take speeding tickets to jury trial in Cherokee because they wanted to give him jail time, and there was no proof that this kid was going 103 and 70. It was just officer's word. So they took it to jury trial, and he was found not guilty of the 103 and a 70, but the jury found him guilty of a regular speeding ticket. A regular speeding ticket, meaning had he got this citation on the side of the road, he would have just paid a fine, got no points on his license, wouldn't even have to show up for court, and he would have went about his way. But because he evoked his right to a jury trial, it was like he was being punished for doing that, because when they found him not guilty of the 103 but guilty of speeding, y'all know what this judge gave him? Our state court judge gave him a day in jail, a year of probation, no alcohol or drug consumption. Mind you, the charge had nothing to do with alcohol or drugs. He's got to submit to random drug tests when they call him. He has to pay $600 in fines, $100 a month to probation and drug testing for the next year, 40 hours community service, and 2 driving classes for a regular speeding ticket. Okay? And so I would assume that's what they're trying to do here, hoping that I'll plea down and take a plea on one of them and blah, blah, blah. I'm not. Because your officer broke into my house without a warrant and without consent. You broke in on my kids. You broke in on my dogs. You violated me, my family, my rights. Like, I'm not taking a plea. I will take that all the way. I will take it to jury trial. I will take it to appeals all the way to fucking Supreme Court if that's what I have to do. Because I won't take a plea on it. And I feel like it really goes to show how dirty it is in this county. Because for a solicitor to look at this and not be like, this is bullshit, and just throw it to the side and actually just, fabricate something in order to charge me, either because he hates me or because he's friends with the sheriff's department. I don't know what the reason is, but he did it. It's just disgusting. It really is. It's really disgusting. So now, I've got to go and get this. I don't know if some of y'all remember when James White did an episode on his YouTube channel, Southern Draw Law, about the school psychologist and my son, my 9-year-old, the one that was completely traumatized by them. That whole conversation between my son and the psychologist had nothing to do with me, right? Besides the fact that my son was like, the police broke into my mom's house and she's going to sue them. But as far as I know, that's all that, was said to me according to the recorded portion or whatever. So when they filed this formal accusation, the first sheet has a whole list of their state witnesses, and it's a whole bunch of random cops. Half of them were here, half of them weren't. I would assume the other half had something to do with the fleeing and eluding. But then the regular people witnesses is my oldest son, his girlfriend, the school psychologist, and my 9-year-old son. Can somebody explain to me, and I feel like that's just a bully move, you're just trying to, again, get me to take a plea so that I don't, put my son through having to get on a stand and try, you're disgusting. You're disgusting. Because what is my now 10-year-old, what is he going to give you? You know what you're going to accomplish? More trauma. You're going to traumatize him. And if anything, it's just going to hurt you, because he's going to tell you exactly what your police officer did. And he's going to tell you how much he doesn't like them and what he witnessed and how he's a bad man, just like he said it on body cam. So, with everything being videotaped as it is from multiple angles, I don't even know why you would put my 9-year-old son down if it wasn't just a passive aggressive, chest move, threat towards me. And then the school psychologist, what the fuck does she have to do? And you left out 2 adults that were standing there with us that could have been whatever kind of witnesses. You left them out. But you put my 9-year-old son and his school psychologist on there? Why is that? Could it be because you saw how upset I was about that situation? How you guys traumatized him and then re-traumatized him because you're fucking sick? Probably. And I think this just goes to show, and if anything, it's just going to hurt you more, because it's going to show the community and it's going to show the citizens that this is how gross you are. This is how low you're willing to stoop in order to try to get whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish from this. But yeah, this is what I'm dealing with. And this is the fight that I'll have to fight before I will get any sort of justice. But understand that it's not just me in this county that deals with this. As I've come out and come forward, I've had so many people who have messaged me and told me their own stories, and I've shared a lot of those on social media. It's really bad. It's really deep. And I'm just going to continue to make videos, and I'm going to continue to take other people's videos that they share with me, and I'm going to continue to expose until the citizens start holding those elected officials accountable and start voting for somebody else and get them out of office, because this is not okay. It's really not. I have to, I'm going to make another episode or YouTube video at some point. There was an officer from Cherokee County who had went on one of my Facebook posts, and one of these ones that went viral, and there were, of course, there were people who would say nasty things here and there, and anytime they would, I would click on the likes to see who it was. that was liking those comments. And a lot of the times it was a lot of local police officers, whether it be Holly Springs or Cherokee County deputies, blah, 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 or their wives. And so there was this one officer in particular who just kept liking all these really nasty things about my son and about myself. So I was like, who are you? And I have some connections. So I took a screenshot and I sent it to a friend of mine, and I was like, look at this. And that person was like, you should pull internal affairs on that person, blah, blah, blah. So I did, and I only pulled it for the last year. And I'll have to go over, I'm going to read it to you guys and go over it. But apparently there was a woman deputy in the jail where he works, who had made several complaints about him touching her. And she's told him to stop several times. It's inappropriate. He makes women feel uncomfortable, blah, blah, blah. She's very upset.